So what makes a good dissertation proposal? In today's video, we're going to go through one on CSR, a really popular topic. Sometimes it's done woefully bad, but sometimes students get it right. This example we look through today, there's some positives, some strengths, but there's also some weaknesses I'm going to go through. So I'm going to scroll through it on my laptop and give a live commentary, and I think you'll be able to pick up some really useful advice, which is going to help you formulate, put together a successful research proposal. Okay, let's have a look at it then. Okay, so to begin, we've got the dissertation proposal title here, the exploratory study of corporate social responsibility from the perspective of UK large chain supermarkets. This is for an MSc in management with business and finance. What I find pleasing about this, I mean, they've chosen some legitimate kind of themes in terms of CSR, and they've also stipulated the specificity of an actual place or a company they're going to examine. So they're looking at supermarkets. So there's going to be some relationship that's formed there in the dissertation. I'm always, any supervisor or any marker is always looking for a narrowing and additional focus. So how could that happen here? I'm going to show you when I look at the research questions later on, because they'll relate to the actual title. And I've got an additional 3 examples of the question of how I would reformulate it. I think they could have stated how they will be looking at CSR. CSR is such a wide topic, and therefore any way that you can demonstrate a particular angle that you're going to investigate is all the better. So it could be more so specific with CSR on the supermarket, also a particular supermarket, a grouping of supermarkets. Again, it's quite broad in what it's stating at the beginning. I'm now going to go through the next section. So it's standard. The next section that we see in a proposal is often the context, which kind of contains the aims and the objectives of what the dissertation sets out to do. So here then we have the aims. Remember, this is about CSR. Okay, so I've highlighted different areas here for us to examine. So initially then they talk, and again in quite a broad sense, about the development of society and economy, the past of companies being responsible to shareholders. More specifically, companies need to be responsible to employees and customers. So what do you think about that? Let's pause. It's not really getting in there from the off talking about CSR. Like, how about hitting us with a hook, get on it straight away and talking about the topic and the research idea. So this is quite broad. It's lacking in any academic resonance or context or ideation. So I'm picking up on that. In the next section then they mention CSR, okay, and it's sort of introduction. But again, it's quite vague. The main thing I'm going to say about this section in the context is it hasn't really got any supportive academic literature. When you're thinking about the rationale or the reasoning for doing something, you know, you're at universities and the reasoning should always have an academic basis. And so support that what scholars have done, what they haven't done, what the previous work suggests, how people have been looking at CSR. Talk about that in your actual context. So they refer to how people have looked at CSR, but there isn't a reference there. So I'd be expecting it would certainly improve the proposal if it had that. Supermarkets in this next purple part, or pink, I don't know. Supermarkets as a part of retail industry can continuously and stably provide people with most of the goods they need in daily life at a relatively reasonable price. Okay, but is this a dissertation on economics, on production? No, it's on CSR. So why are you providing this additional background, which doesn't really have relevance to the ideas that you're putting over in the title? The next part there, in the UK, some major supermarkets such as Marks and Spencer's, Morrison's and Waitrose occupied most of the market share. I don't think that's actually true. I mean, the big 4 are Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda and Morrison's. And that might be something you want to focus on. Very often when dissertations look at the groceries, it's for the identifiable big 4 that can be looked at as a specific group. It is difficult for small-scale agriculture products markets to compete with them. Again, what is the relationship of this? What is the meaning? What is the purpose? Stay on form, stay on the idea of the CSR. Don't just get in a generalist conversation about supermarkets and the economics of supermarkets. So here in this next highlighted bit, they talk about, however, most of the studies they're referring to studies, but they aren't referencing them. So really, it'd be really nice at this stage to see some of that referencing. What studies have talked about CSR and these sorts of companies. And then this next highlighted part in yellow, the objective of this research is to study the CSR of some major supermarkets in the UK and its impact from different angles. Okay, and the reason why I've highlighted this is that that's not really an objective, that's more of an aim. So objectives are more about the steps of how you're going to do something. So it could be about the methodology that you're going to go out and collect data through interviews or questionnaires. The aims are kind of a broader kind of research, the purpose and what you aim to achieve. So next here, the student has put some questions. I'll just highlight them here. So here are the questions that the student has put down, using literature to base it in academic context. The purpose of, so the research will answer the following questions. So we've got 3 questions. What is corporate social responsibility and its impact? What's the corporate social responsibility strategies of different UK supermarkets? How does supermarkets change their approach to CSR over the years? So the wording of them could be better. And also there's kind of like a vagueness and a broadness to what they're asking to do. And each of these could almost be a dissertation, not a research question, but a topic or a theme to be looking at. There's a few ways that I think they could be improved. You know, you're better to focus in on one particular of these sort of questions that they're looking at, and maybe have one key question and then have some sub questions which are leading off that, maybe 2 or 3, and then they're all relating to the same aspect of this theme. So in the yellow here, these are some of my suggestions that I've put below. So I think better questions to fashion here would be something like, how is the image of CSR constructed by the big 4 UK grocery firms on social media? So why are these better? So we're thinking about CSR being constructed. Immediately that's leaning us towards certain theories of how CSR is constructed. And then also we're kind of focusing it down on the big 4 in the grocery firms. And then we're looking at a particular site and location of where CSR is constructed. How does Tesco construct a narrative of CSR through community engagement? So again, what we are doing, we are narrowing here to a specific company, supermarket company, Tesco. We're again talking about the construction of a narrative, which is going to lend itself to theories that we might use about the construction of narrative. And then also we're finding a particular area of community engagement, so a particular type of CSR we're looking at there. Thirdly, how is the narrative of CSR constructed in Aldi's strategy documents, a content analysis approach? So again, a better research title or question, because we're looking at the narrative of CSR, we're looking at a particular supermarket, we're looking at a particular location of strategy documents, and then we're also demonstrating or signaling a type of analytical approach that will be used. So much better in terms of creating definitive understanding. So next we're going to look at some of the theoretical basis. So going down here, they're talking about broad theories, and I've made some comments as I go down. Perhaps you can pause this at times so you can read it in fuller. I didn't think that they, in this first yellow part down here midway, I didn't think that they identified the definition of the approach, the field, the theory which will underpin the understanding of CSR that this research will have. So they're talking about CSR, but it's a broad field. And there's many ways that many different scholars, many different disciplines will access, approach, position their understanding of that. So how are you choosing to situate your literature? What are you drawing on? What field, what academic field, what discipline, or what particular pocket or area within a discipline? Because there's many ways of constructing the notion of CSR depending on the theoretical approach, your disciplinary approach, and all of those understandings. So that first part should really be using literature to help you construct how this research is going to approach it. I think simpler ways in a literature base where you just kind of throw out different understandings of CSR. A more high level is how you're using that to align your research with that. So you're doing a sorting process and actually saying, this is the badge that this dissertation is going to wear. This is the camp it's going to align itself with. This is how it's going to be situated. Okay, so this next part in the literature review, the dissertation later says it will analyse content of documents. Therefore, what about literature of how different mediums of communication, narratives of CSR using discourse, text, images, symbols, signifiers, creates the representations of CR? So again, I kind of felt in this next paragraph, just a general looking over some of the CSR literature, and it's not kind of underpinning the direction and the purpose of this proposed dissertation enough. Later on in the dissertation, dissertation and methodology, it says that they're going to be looking at content of documents. So how about drawing on some literature about how academics and studies and disciplines have looked at documents and narratives in different ways, using different methods? So maybe talk about some of the empirics of that there. How they've looked at discourse or images or symbols or signifiers or the brand to represent notions of CSR. So next, as we go through this literature, again, just pause that as I'm going through it. I kind of felt when I read through this part of literature, it was still not clear of the field of literature, what bodies of academic work, what debates, where will the dissertation position itself on CSR, what underlying perspective or approach will be used that will determine how the view of construction of CSR. A good level of a proposal of the literature is more purposeful, more directive, more kind of carving out a niche or an area or a gap of the overall understanding that this dissertation will have. And I think you will get this where it's a bit more generalist. They could have focused more maybe on some studies that are related to supermarkets as well, the grocery sector and CSR. So think about the specifics of the question and the title, and then allow that to flow into the actual literature review. Now, the mistake that is made then is that you start off with a general title, then the chances are your literature review will be quite general as well. So it's important even at the beginning to get that right, the specific areas, and then you can have that added punch and angles in your literature review. I've got to cut this now. I've got a meeting scheduled with a student, so I'm just going to stop it for now and I'll get back to you in a moment. Okay, so here we are again. Just had a quick meeting with a student on placement. They're doing good. All is happy. So back to it. We're just getting onto the methodology section. Also at this stage, I'm going to give a mark at the end, so stick with it till we get there, and then it'll be interesting for you to see how I grade it. And write down any comments down below, what you think of it. Do you think it's a good piece or not? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. So we're going to get back on with it, and we're talking about the research methodology. The methodology, just looking at it and an initial appraisal and sizing up of it, looks quite short, quite compact in what's being written. They're talking about they're primarily going to use secondary sources. Hopefully you can pause the screen at this stage and have a look at their methodology in detail. They're talking about some of the literature that is out there and some of the techniques. They are talking about using content analysis, which is good to see. They've got some references in there, but it's lacking detail. You know, we can see that by the length, it's quite minimal. So what are the negatives and the positives that I've said? I think there could have been more scoping and refining about what it is they're actually looking at. So in particular, which supermarkets, these weren't specified. So that could be stated at this stage. Why not? It could be changed later. So for the purpose of the proposal, find that definition and you might change it later. We just want to see when we're marking it that you have thoughts about it in terms of refining down. What information, more specifics are needed about the information that they're going to get from supermarkets. What does that mean, information? It's just a loose term. The third point down here, how would you use research literature as data? So in the sentence above here, they've talked about, in addition, there are many research literatures on CSR, and these documents also include certain available data. It's not clear. You can't really just magpie and pick and plunder other research data from studies as part of your methodology. And what data will that be? There's no initial searching or qualifying of what this might be at this stage. Content analysis of CSR documents is something many students like to do. So it's something I see a lot of, particularly with CSR. I think students maybe feel it's comfortable. They don't have to go out into the field and gather data in a personable manner. This is readily available. The documents can be accessed and they can apply content analysis to it. I think they could go into greater detail about what sort of content analysis. There's various levels of discussion that you can have using some sources at this stage to have a little bit of discussion about content analysis, how you would do it, what type of content analysis. Some of the positives, they have identified an analytical method in content analysis, so that's good to see, and it is supported by sources in that area. But I just think there could be a greater overview about what they are going to do and how they are going to do it. And then we turn to the research plan. Okay, so it's not quite clear, but we could increase the size of that so we can see a little better. And there we go. here they've laid out writing the proposal, reading, writing literature review, collecting data, writing method, writing conclusion, and they've done it in a time order going through there. So, you know, it looks very doable. They've planned it out in a consecutive way, and they seem to have assigned the correct amounts of time to each of those things. But it's not in any great detail really, but it's a proposal and it's something that we can start working on. And here they have a series of bibliographies and references that they've used to kind of show an awareness of work in this area. So that's good to see. Finally then, to draw this to a conclusion as a proposal, as we've gone through, hopefully you've seen how some of the improvements I would have made to it as a supervisor and what this student could do to get a better mark. The positives are that they have chosen a good theme, a coherent theme in corporate social responsibility. They've also applied a particular analytical method in content analysis, and they've started to think about a certain place or companies or organizations that they can go to. My main gripe and axe to grind against this and what I would radically change is greater specificity throughout. How can you refine it and find more pinpointing of the areas you want to look at? This relates to CSR, how they can have a particular approach or understanding of CSR to go through and take into the research, how they could have more of an understanding about a particular form of content analysis that they want to do, and also what is the place, where are the studies, what supermarkets. If there was a greater definition and if there was more decision process being made at this stage, I think it would add to this proposal. All in all, not a bad effort. You know, I'm happy with it. The basics are there. It is academic and they are using sources and references. I would probably give it around about a 60 at this stage for a proposal. There are improvements to be made which would have got it into the 70s and the high firsts, but there's some solid foundations for the student to progress on. So that's it for this video. Write down in the comment sections below the mark that you might have awarded this proposal. Hopefully it's really helped you to demonstrate, to see, and you can now visualize and apprehend clearer what a proposal needs from this example. Remember to like. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, studiers. Bye bye.